Summer's in full swing, bringing vacations, family gathering, and lots of time with the kids. But if you're worried about your co-parent's alcohol use, this season can also be very stressful. And that's where SoberLink comes in. Imagine your kids are off on a beach trip with your co-parent. With SoberLink, you'll receive instant proof of your ex's sobriety via text or email. These portable, discreet devices use built-in facial recognition and tamper sensors to prevent cheating, giving you peace of mind that your kids are safe no matter where they are. SoberLink is more than just a breathalyzer and is second to none when it comes to rebuilding trust and improving accountability. I've personally seen it work for others, and I know it can work for you. So safeguard your summer with SoberLink. Visit soberlink.com/Susan to learn more and get $50 off on your device.
Coming up on today's episode of the Divorce and Beyond podcast.
And that's all we're talking about here is balance. It's not black and white, all or nothing. You don't have to stop being a high-performing high achiever. You just have to recognize that drinking every single night so you can keep going, there's a train wreck ahead.
Hello, and welcome to the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host. As a top divorce attorney and family law mediator for 30 years, I know what you need to know to get through your divorce and, most importantly, how to move beyond it to thrive and transition to your new future. My experts and I are here to give you the insider view into the process, so listen in for the wisdom and expert information you need on your journey through divorce and beyond. Hello, and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host, and today, listeners, we're going to dive into the topic of alcohol use disorder and divorce. Not an uncommon combination, by the way, everyone. Unfortunately, I know this myself, and certainly as a divorce attorney for more than 30 years, I've seen this. I've seen this become alcohol use disorder or disordered use of alcohol during divorce. We'll talk about that a bit and then in the larger context. But I have the perfect expert for you to be hearing about this topic from. She has a wonderful handle. It is called the Hangover Whisperer, which I was like, absolutely perfect. So that's actually her tag on social media. Go find her. She's big on TikTok, Instagram, etc. But her name is Colleen Kachmann, and she has a very interesting perspective to give you support and help as you're going through this process and to help you perhaps not have the hangover that you might have when you're going through difficult times or an experience of disordered drinking. So, Colleen, first off, thank you for coming and joining us today.
It's so good to be here. My two favorite topics, booze and marriage decisions. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and as you were saying earlier, right, booze and bad decisions do seem to go together, and we're going to dive into that. But maybe, you came to this place of becoming the Hangover Whisperer, helping people through booze and bad decisions, perhaps, from some of your own experiences. Oh. And so I think I have a PhD in both of those. So yes. So maybe let's start there. You and I have spoken about this. Certainly much of what you said resonated with me because I may not be at PhD level, but I would say I'm at master's level with my own bad decisions with booze and divorce and marriage decisions, relationship decisions. So why don't you tell us how you got to PhD level?
I honestly got through all of those decisions the honest way, in that I was doing the best I could with the best I knew all the time. I was very high functioning, high achieving. I was good girl, perfectionist. I came out of college in 3 years. And let's have the 5-bedroom house and 2 brand new cars with matching little boys, and then matching little girls after that. So my first husband and I were married for 22 years. And I never thought of alcohol specifically as a problem, but I was a partier, but I was never the crier. I was never falling down drunk. I was just having fun. And I thought hangovers were funny too. Like, this is just what we're doing. But what happened as I moved throughout my life is what I would call stress, as we all have. Soon we've got 2 working parents, 4 children, more activities than we could possibly keep up with. He's taken one kid to travel soccer in a city with one girl, and I'm doing the other boy in another city. It never stopped. And our life just got bigger and bigger. I talk now about how perfectionism forms. It forms in childhood. It is a way of getting and receiving love and attention and validation. And it's pretty easy to be perfect when you're a kid and that's your only job is to manage yourself. But we take this lifestyle strategy and then we just keep adding and adding and adding and all this pressure inside of us. And we're taught, especially women particularly, but men too, we're taught to manage our behavior. The woman who can put up with the most shit and still smile and look hot and get all of her stuff done and make sure everybody around her is good, that woman wins the trophy. What is the trophy? Includes a drinking problem, possibly some sort of other form of self-sabotage, eating. Like you didn't read the fine print, but that's what you won. Because what happens is we go through life managing our behavior, suppressing our emotions, and we have no outlet. I often say, what women say is we can't find our off switch with alcohol. Like my off switch is broken. Honey, you don't have an off switch for anything. And you take that attitude from the moment your eyes open and your feet hit the ground and it's go time. And you do that 12, 15 hours a day. You still never get all your stuff done. The only way you can relax ever is to give yourself permission to calm down is to pour a glass of wine. So that's what I did. My youngest was 2 years old. I remember the vacation we went on. We drank every single day, fun, light, no problems, but we drank every single day. And I remember by the time we hauled 4 kids and all the shit home from Florida, and I got them all to bed and all the laundry done and everything put away, there was a little bit of vodka left. And I liked Grey Goose and cranberry juice. And I remember thinking, I don't want my party to end. I just worked so hard. And that was really when literally the night where I poured a drink and my thinking shifted from needing a reason to drink. I'm on vacation. It's a date night. It's girls' night, to needing a reason to not drink. All my stuff is done. And now I can pour myself a glass of relief. And so I did that. I lived my life that way in my first marriage for 10 plus years, drinking a bottle of wine every night or something, Grey Goose, whatever. I didn't think it was a problem. I thought it was the only way I could cope. Like the idea of giving up alcohol, even though I knew I drank too much and I wish I drank less, the idea of giving it up felt impossible. And then I go into my first divorce process. And honestly, I drank less during that process because, as you know, you got to keep your nose clean. There's no room for error when people are writing shit down and giving it to their lawyers. And so I honestly was pretty well behaved. I dialed my drinking back, but then I met husband number 2. And he comes riding in with a white Porsche and unlimited amounts of high-end Napa trips and all this stuff. And I was like, yes, please. And so I took that same set of circumstances in my life, 4 kids, tumultuous relationship with baby daddy, wonderful man, by the way, and then added a new husband and 3 stepkids and unlimited budget for alcohol and just kept on going. And it wasn't until COVID where I said, I can't keep doing this. I'll say I'm an alcoholic. I'll say whatever you want. Put me in a psych ward, just make it stop. And that was the only thing I could do to make it stop. So I quit drinking. And just to quickly kind of sum up, I thought I was an alcoholic and that I'd have to quit drinking forever, which is, of course, what we want to avoid, which is why we try so hard to avoid saying, I'm not okay. Because I thought the reason I wasn't okay was as an alcoholic. And that's a lifelong statement right there. There's no walking that back. But finally, I got to the point where I didn't care. I went into what I call like sober land, So now I'm even more perfect because I'm not drinking anything. So it upped that perfectionism, which if anything that ends in an ism, by the way, pro tip, is a mental health disorder. So perfectionism was actually the problem. I realized about 18 months into sobriety, I was more anxious and more depressed than I'd ever been, even though I was killing it and nobody could point a finger at me for nothing. And yet I still was just falling apart on the inside, looking at the end of a second marriage, because that whole thing, as wonderful as everybody was in that story, it was not a good fit. And my life had just come to a place where I could no longer be me and keep doing all of this.
Okay, I'm hearing the PhD. I'm hearing you earned that PhD. And oh my gosh, there's so much. At first, if I can just say, there's so much in what you say, as I said earlier, that resonates with me, that resonates, I'm sure, with the women out there who are listening, or the vast majority of them. And so let me just sort of take it from the top of the things that jumped out at me, because there's so much here. The first one, perfectionism, right? That is, I love that you say that we learn it in childhood. And I had never heard anyone say this before. In fact, I have an entire episode with Dr. Vasya Sarantopoulou about perfectionism. But we did not talk about this fact that perfectionism is sort of birthed in childhood. And it's easy to be perfect in childhood, right? When you have like a certain small list of things and only one job sort of as a child, but that it gets bigger and bigger and harder the older that we get. But perfectionism, it's another good point that you make, that isms are mental health disorders, because they certainly are. And alcohol go together all the time. In fact, most of the women that I know that have any sort of disordered relationship with alcohol have a perfectionism component to them, their personality or their lives, or whatever we want to call that. Why do you think that is?
Because alcohol is medicine. Let's remove the framework that some drugs are good and other drugs are bad, and we have drugs and alcohol. No, it's all the same thing. Alcohol is a depressant drug that suppresses the central nervous system, and it's biphasic, which means small amounts have opposite effects of large amounts. So small amounts of alcohol can be therapeutic. You do feel more relaxed. Your mind slows down. That's why we want the drink. Okay. So there is nothing wrong with looking at alcohol as a drug. I used to say, mommy needs her medicine, or I whine, you whine, all of the things we say. But alcohol does give us the relief. And here's the key, that we don't have permission to give ourselves. Most of us don't understand that the voice in our head is always talking. We are living with a maniacal, tyrannical, awful bully that is saying, you're not good enough. What if this doesn't go well? Do you remember what you did earlier today and that didn't work out? And what if this happens tomorrow? And it never stops. So alcohol is medicine. And for a moment, maybe a half an hour or an hour or a couple of years with normal, moderate use, it does give you that relief. The problem is that what is it relieving? It is relieving a feeling of pressure, of needing to do more, be more. Like perfectionism is when you think you need to do more, be more, get more in order to be loved. So you're living in this mindset, and the only way to give yourself the relief you absolutely need is to use this medication. The problem is it has, if you drink too much, the biphasic effect kicks in. You hit the law of diminishing returns. It also spikes your cortisol, ruins your sleep, wakes you up in the middle of the night. If you drink too much, beyond the 0.055 blood alcohol level is actually the biphasic line. So then you're waking up, you're not well rested, then you're feeling guilty and overthinking, and then you get up and go into your day. It also affects dopamine. You have baseline levels of dopamine. Alcohol spikes it really high and then drops you on your ass. Anybody's ever been hungover. And so you've got high levels of cortisol, low levels of dopamine, and this agitation and no coping skills to do anything but perform your way out, thinking if I can just get it all done, I will feel better. That time never comes. And so you're like, fuck, I need a break. Let me pour a drink. We all get here because we're doing the best we can in doing what we think we're supposed to be doing, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, everything about it makes sense. You said so many things there. I'm taking notes here as we're talking because I think there's so much that does make sense in this. And you just said something that I also, just rings so true, is that I think both for us, anyone who's drinking like that and using it as a drug, we may not even realize that we're doing that. We're using it in a variety of different ways, and you've referenced them, right? People are using alcohol as a way to combat the stress of trying to achieve perfection. And of course, we never can do that. To try and deal with, we've taken on more than anyone could possibly ever do in a day. We use it, as you referenced, as a reward. I did do all of the things that were on my to-do list today. I deserve a drink at the end of that day, or I deserve to relax and have my drug of the day. We also live in a society, because you referenced this as well. And so I'm sort of going to pull it together here now. Was it the Rolling Stones, Mommy's Little Helper? And I think they were talking about Valium or something. But in the world we live in today, I think we do live in the world where alcohol is Mommy's Little Helper. Go scroll through your Instagram or your TikTok feed. And how many of the funny videos do we see that are basically poking fun at or encouraging, go pour yourself. Have you seen the ones with the glass of wine that's bigger than our head?
Oh, I probably posted it. I have.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But, so it's laughing, but there's also this sort of societal acknowledgement of using alcohol in all of these ways. And, so how do we, if you're caught up in this cycle of this, how did you, because you did obviously, how do you even recognize that you're there and start to find your way out of it?
Well, I think you recognize you're there when you stop long enough to realize you already know you're there. If you're Googling questions like, what's the CDC recommendation on alcohol intake for women over 40? Like that would give you, check your search history and the questions that you're asking. That's part of as a coach, what I teach, you're asking the wrong questions. What's wrong with me? Why can't I control my drinking? Am I an alcoholic? Has absolutely no value. Even if you find the answer and somebody gives you something like, yep, that all makes sense. What are you going to do with that? The real question is, over drinking is a symptom of the problem. You are treating a problem, unmet needs. You've got too much on your plate. You've agreed to things that you don't actually agree with. You are self-silencing. You are going along to get along, and the Band-Aid is alcohol. I was able to do so much if I just poured a drink and pushed through it because alcohol is socially acceptable. We're all laughing about it. It's okay. It's not okay to be tired and bitchy. It's not okay to say, no, I'm not working another concession stand for my fourth kid in band. No, I'm not doing that. That's not okay. But everybody giggles if you've got I used to have a water bottle that said, there's a chance this might be vodka. Be warned. It was I thought it was funny. Everybody thought it was funny. I didn't have to make the changes that I eventually had to make, which was for me to say, my needs are not negotiable. They're not something we're going to barter. I need this amount of sleep. I need less stimulation. I need less stuff. But I didn't want to admit that because as a woman, I was properly trained to not be okay until everyone around me is okay. And I had so many people around me, it was never my turn. And when it was my turn, I didn't know what the hell to do with it. I'd finally get a night alone and I'd drink a whole bottle of wine before the garage door shut. I didn't know how to be alone. And that's what I would have to say is, you're living in a dysregulated nervous system, my friend. If you felt more relaxed, you would drink like someone who's more relaxed. That's the upside down approach that I give. We all think if I could just drink 2 drinks a week, 2 drinks at a time, 2 drinks a week, and everybody proves that that is the ideal amount of alcohol, then I will feel better about myself. No. You have to focus on feeling better about yourself and taking the space. And I know going through a divorce, this is so hard because I wanted to be the best ex-wife ever, the best new wife ever, and the best mom ever. There was nowhere I want to be the best version of myself. I was performing my way. And so what that looked like, I was married to an executive. He was giving me child support. So if he had to work late or if he couldn't show up when he said, I got this because, right of refusal, I'm going to keep the kids with me at all times, which meant and then I had stepkids on top of that. Like there was no time. And I never realized that my body is a person. And I needed to treat like this whole idea of self-love. What the hell does that mean? Especially if you're disappointed with yourself and embarrassed about the past. That's where you're identifying as your identity. Self-love is actually realizing you were issued a human body and that body has needs and she has to go potty. She needs to drink water. She needs to sleep. Like you don't have to love yourself to treat yourself with the same consideration and dignity that you would another human being at the grocery store that you've never met before. And that's the problem as women. We have expectations on ourselves. If you had to write out your own job description, you wouldn't ask anybody to do your job and you couldn't pay anybody. You'd need 3 people who agree to work without bathroom breaks in order to replace yourself. What do? You realize that taking care of yourself isn't actually an option because you have a human body. And this idea that you're superhuman and you show up when everybody else gives up, very nice to put that stuff on Instagram, not realistic. And if you don't balance your own needs with the way you're showing, and that's all we're talking about here is balance. It's not black and white, all or nothing. You don't have to stop being a high-performing high achiever. You just have to recognize that drinking every single night so you can keep going, there's a train wreck ahead.
So many people will hit that train wreck and then fall into a space of all or nothing. Hey, listeners. Are you navigating the tough waters of divorce and feeling overwhelmed by the process? Let me introduce you to Hello Divorce, your ultimate ally in making this journey smoother and less stressful. Hello Divorce offers a modern, affordable approach to divorce, combining expert legal advice with easy-to-use online tools. So whether you need help with paperwork, mediation, or simply some guidance, Hello Divorce has you covered. Plus, their flat fee services mean no hidden costs, just clear upfront pricing. Visit hellodivorce.com today to learn more and take the first step toward your fresh start. Remember, you don't have to do this alone. Hello Divorce is here to help. Stay tuned for more from Colleen Kachmann as we discuss more of her insights on alcohol use and abuse and how her innovative tools and strategies for emotional sobriety can help you find your freedom. She's also going to share how you can access her free training on the core principles of emotional sobriety in part 2, so be sure to listen on.
If someone's going through a divorce, the shortest distance between you and getting through this is to just remove alcohol entirely, because when it comes to it's do or die time in your life and everything you're doing in the next 3 months is going to affect the rest of your children's lives, your future, your co-parenting relationship, your financial situation. In that moment, the taller you can walk through a divorce with your own integrity, there's just nothing you could do better for yourself in the short term.
And now we return to today's show.
Talk about sort of reprogramming, I guess I'm going to call it, and coming at this, I really find it very interesting. that you come at it from an internal perspective as opposed to the external of regulating your alcohol consumption. I was thinking about those Google, full disclosure to everyone out there, I stopped drinking 15 years ago. For me, stopping was just the way to do it. But you said that thing about, I have said to clients as their divorce attorney, when they would say to me, well, I always would ask a client, what's the worst thing your ex is going to say about you? I need to know, so them, what's gone on in your marriage. What's the worst thing that we're going to be dealing with? 90% of the time they go, he's going to say I drink too much. He's going to say I'm an alcoholic. He's going to say this, that, but it usually was around alcohol. And I would say then my first advice to you as your divorce attorney is stop drinking during your divorce. And I would say that the number one response I got to that was, are you effing crazy? I'm stressed out. I'm going through the worst because I need my wine or I need my drink. But I'll regulate or I'll do that. And then they would do those Google searches that you're talking about. How much is appropriate? And because I know they do those searches because they'd come and tell me, Google says 2 glasses of wine a night is perfectly fine or something like that. So how do you flip that script?
I honestly would give 2 different pieces of advice. I agree with you that if someone's going through a divorce, the shortest distance between you and getting through this, the shortest distance is to just remove alcohol entirely, because you don't really have time to process. Like the work that I do with women, I don't have them quit drinking. I say you can quit drinking when you feel like quitting drinking. Like the goal is to feel more connected and present and relaxed. And then the side effect of you becoming that version of yourself, the alcohol sitch just takes care of itself. But when it comes to it's do or die time in your life, and everything you're doing in the next 3 months is going to affect the rest of your children's lives, your future, your co-parenting relationship, your financial situation, like in that moment, it just not as a coach, as your friend, like, yeah. And you're going to feel so much better. You think you can't do it without alcohol. No, my friend, you're shooting yourself in the foot and still trying to run a marathon and pretend like you're not bleeding if alcohol's out of control. And so the best thing I would agree to short term, like you can circle back, but wait a minute, sister, before you do, there's a little bit of work that needs to be done, because like me, I did also dial it way back, not completely, but then I end up getting wooed and wined and dined and ending up, galloping into the sunset in the wrong direction once again. And so you can only do so much though. And that's what I'm answering the question with. Like, there's only so much room for your life is in chaos. And now is not the time for spiritual retreats and, really getting to the root of your perfectionism. Then just remove 90% of your problem of the internal stress. Because like I said, alcohol with the cortisol and the low dopamine, and also the guilt and the obsession of, does anybody know, am I getting away with this? Like if you could, the taller you can walk through a divorce with your own integrity, like there's just nothing you could do better for yourself in the short term.
I love how you phrase that, right? Like the taller you can walk through your divorce, and alcohol is just going to weigh you down through that. If what we're talking about resonates with you, then that is the short-term advice. But I also like this longer-term approach to this, right? Remove the problem for the time being and then revisit this issue, but revisit it. And what you work in your work with women, you're revisiting it from that internal perspective. And I think that is, it's just not something I've ever heard someone talking about. What you will usually hear is people saying, you got to go to meetings, or you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And you really don't talk about completely eliminating alcohol from your world. You talk about intuitive drinking. So let's talk a little bit about that. When someone is in the space where they have the ability to do this work,
yeah.
How do you approach it with them?
I call it emotional sobriety. Emotional sobriety, big picture, is when you are no longer intoxicated by your own bullshit. Turns out your thoughts about other people's thoughts are still your thoughts. Your feelings about other people's feelings are still your feelings. It is not your relationship with alcohol that needs to change. It's your relationship with yourself, where you are able to see that you are causing your own stress. You, by the story you're telling yourself, the patterns that you are running. And so I teach 7 core skills of emotional sobriety, which include radical honesty, identity-based change. Perfectionists are behavior-based change people. We think that we got to do, be, get, prove, and then we will feel complete and whole and healthy and grounded and abundant. No, 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 no. Like, you have to feel those things. And then that's kind of what you manifest into the world. So what I teach is a whole transformation process of how you think. It's like learning a different language. Most of us don't realize if you printed out a transcript of your brain and what's going through there, you are being harassed and bullied. There's hate speech. You look old. You look fat. What if everybody thinks you're an idiot? Why do you always? That's the water you're swimming in. And until you recognize the internal dialogue and learn how to manage the conversation in your own head, you really got no business trying to manage it out in the world. That's what I say. There's a difference between thinking on purpose. I'll be asking the questions instead of, why do I keep drinking so much? How do I drink 20% less next week? How? Then, like, what's the feeling? Curious, hopeful, interested? I don't know. What do I need to do for that? It's a completely different path than why can't I control myself? And the only thing that changed there was the question you asked. So that is emotionally sober, is realizing your mind is a tool. And if you're not managing it, you're the tool. And you are just putting forth into the world all of the preconditioned social programming, patriarchal, cultural, societal expectations. You're just running the play. You can take control of that. And that takes stopping long enough to really get into what you really want and not what you think you should be doing so that you can feel better.
You're putting words to something that I think probably most every woman, at least out there who's listening, who's found in any way. I mean, and I think it would probably be very hard to find women out there who haven't had some sort of head trash situation in their lives, right? We are just the land, I call it head trash, right? That conversation that we have in our heads where we are ruder to ourselves than we would ever consider being to any other human being on the planet. And if someone talked to our kids that way, we would come after that person right at their throat. Right? Yet we do that to ourselves constantly, constantly. And so to be able to turn that around, and you said it as it's as simple as that. It's as simple as changing the question or asking the question differently. I suspect you and I both know how hard it is to change that dialogue. But the first step, what do I always say, listeners? The first step to any significant and real change is awareness that change needs to happen and awareness of what needs to change. One of the things clearly that needs to change is your own relationship with yourself. And so I find this absolutely fascinating, the way that you come at this, because I think that the narrative around alcohol use disorder and alcohol abuse is very much focused on the substance. And by substance, I mean the actual alcohol, right? And just if I could just get it down to that one drink or whatever is the appropriate amount, as opposed to very much internalizing and working on this as you do with women from the internal. And then the alcohol is just the adjunct, things that gets better.
Oh, yes. I mean, how you show up, like, I would boil it all down to one word: unfuckwithable.
Yeah.
Like, when you learn how to
word?
become unfuckwithable. But what it is it's aligning mind and body. What does that even mean? Right? It means this: I don't ever try to not drink the third glass of wine. Like, I usually am between 1 and 2 glasses of wine. For example, myself, I'm not trying to not have a third glass of wine. The words in my head The transcript is, I don't want any more. I do believe I've had enough. I can't wait to get to bed. I can't wait to read my book. So that is where, if you are behaving in a way that you have to try, you're using willpower. You only need willpower to do shit you don't really want to do, which means there's a disconnect between what's happening in your mind and what you're performing in the world. And so, yes, that takes getting into silence, getting into self, and quite honestly, having tools. It's taken me 4 years to create the program and the process. It's a beautiful process, but just like you said, the number one, 50%, you are 50% of the way there when you say, yes, I know I need to change. You're 50% of the way there. Now it's just getting tools and processes that resonate with you. There's no one right path. You can quit drinking completely. You can do mindful drinking. You can do a little bit of both. And then, oh, guess what? You can change your mind at any time, because that's our God-given human right. Truth is just an experience. And where we get into trouble is we get caught in what we should think is true or what was true yesterday. Well, yesterday's truth is tomorrow's bullshit. And you have to learn to align with your mind and your body. What is your body telling you? And listen to that felt experience. Your truth is in your body, not your brain, though. That's where I think we all get mixed up, is we don't understand we are not our thoughts.
And we are so focused on them because we're stuck with them all day, every day, in and out of the entire day. So one of the things that you mentioned are these core principles of emotional sobriety, really like focusing on that internal aspect of this. And I want to make sure that my listeners know, because you have made available for them a free training on your core principles of emotional sobriety. I went to your website and took a look, and I'm going to be walking through that myself. Thank you very much. But can you tell us a little bit more about that and how they can access that wonderful training?
Well, I'll give you a link in the show notes, but it's an audio course. So that means you listen on a podcast. So when you go to the page, it'll say secret podcast, but it's called The Foundations of Emotional Sobriety. I think there's 8, maybe 9 lessons, less than 10 minutes. And it walks you through how, how to manage your mind, but first, how to regulate your nervous system, because you think how you feel. If you're scared, you think scared. If you're calm, you think calm. So it's the foundations of getting this connection between, oh, I think how I feel. Oh, I feel how I think. Oh, there's a loop here. And it's very simple, 8 to 10 minute lessons with every single of my favorite coaching questions. You have to ask the right questions. Is this true? What else could be true? All of these questions that you can train your brain to ask thoughts on purpose, because your brain will try to solve any problem you give it. What's wrong with me? Well, let me work on that. How do I build on what's right? A whole different question. So this just walks you through in your ears in a very intimate setting, 8 to 10 minutes, asking you certain questions, giving you some basic foundational principles on emotional sobriety so that you can start moving. And I teach a 1-year program. My clients, their favorite course is this little piece here. And that's what I'm giving you guys for free today. It's just a starter, has nothing to do with alcohol. It's Foundations of Emotional Sobriety.
I love it. I told you I took a look at it and I've already got it teed up. And I like that idea too, that it's in bite-sized chunks. I'm a firm believer in, it's one thing to talk at this high level of what you've got to do, but what it sounds like you've been able to do here is to break it down into little bite-sized chunks. And that's so helpful for people. But also you work with women who really want to go through this process, right? That's, you're coaching with women and helping them in a variety of different ways. I know people out there, a lot of this is resonating with, and we've talked about, most of my listeners are probably in the midst of a divorce, thinking about a divorce, just after their divorce. Who is the ideal person to be reaching out to you to work with you as their coach?
On average, my clients drink at least 10, but let's be honest, more like 50. But usually, like if you drink 10 or more drinks per week, that would qualify you. In my program, again, is emotional sobriety, but that's who I attract, the high-performing women who are using alcohol to cope. It is women who are ready to stop putting a Band-Aid on it, because for many women, they do get sober. Unlike you, 15 years later, they are not still talking about that. And so what happens is they get on and off the wagon. And every time you try and fail to change, it makes it worse when you come back. And so I also work with women who have been in AA or sobriety for years, and they would like to drop the story that they can't drink because they had a drinking problem in the past. And they know they need to reintroduce alcohol with support, because there is a lot of specific things to the drug we call alcohol, specific mindsets. And so they want to work through the reintroduction of alcohol. So I would say, like, the carrot that I get people in with is the topic of alcohol. You identify in some way as somebody who drinks too much, or you worry about drinking too much, and you want to drop this story that it has anything to do with alcohol. And you want to move forward into unfuckwithable emotional sobriety.
So if you want to become unfuckwithable, it's a good time to reach out to Colleen. So what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
The show notes that I'm going to give you, you can sign up for that Emotion Foundations course. And then if you want to reach out to me on my website or on my own podcast, which is It's Not About the Alcohol, or on any of my social media feeds, Hangover Whisperer, there's always a link that you can reach out and schedule a free consultation if you're looking for a permanent solution and you're ready to do it.
And I encourage you all, we've had a few laughing moments in this podcast. We've had some serious moments. We've heard some serious, repercussions from drinking, and just things that I truly suspect have been things that you out there who are listening have said, oh yeah, I totally understand that. And if that's where you are, I highly recommend you reach out, check out the free training, check out the resources, check out Colleen's podcast. It's Not About the Alcohol. I mean, this is for an area, I will say, where there's a lot of despair in this particular area, right? Alcohol use disorder, for women especially, I think there's shame. There's so much around this, but despair is another thing around it. You're also offering a path and hope and a different solution and a different way to go forward with this. And I very much appreciate that on my behalf and on behalf of my listeners, because that's what the world needs. We need solutions, and solutions that work. So, Colleen, thank you so much for joining us here, and thank you for the work that you do and for sharing your story, because in your story, there's a nugget and a kernel for all of us to relate to. So I very much appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a fun conversation, Susan.
Thank you for joining me today on the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I hope you found some information and inspiration to help you on this journey. Please join me every Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a new episode. And if you like the show, please take the time to subscribe and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. You can also find more information on the website at divorceandbeyondpod.com, where you'll find links to the YouTube channel, transcripts of the episodes, and other bonus content. So I'll see you next week to help you move through your divorce and beyond.